Okay, welcome to your next video on Roadblocks to Coaching Presence, looking at the parts that you avoid. Right, so you'll notice that for a number of videos, we keep coming back to coaching presence. And that's because coaching presence is such an important aspect of what makes a client feel comfortable to share, and to the degree that you can also look into what they've shared to bring them forward. Right, so in this topic itself, we are going to actually cover the ICF core competencies of competency 2 on coaching mindset. How do you develop that coaching mindset that actually impacts your presence? And competency 5 naturally, because it's about maintaining your presence as a coach. Right, so we want you to look at your own awareness of your own personal triggers that you bring into coaching, and as well as how do you then stay present amid the intensity that you are facing within. And in essence, it's about how is it that your unowned coach patterns actually quietly interfere with your presence, depth, and the impact that you make, right? So we've designed this to surface the hidden dynamics that most coach trainings do not talk about, right? But then this is still very much related to your coach development. And today we also have Ming here. I think there's a lot that he's going to bring in terms of the types of aspects of a coach or patterns that actually get in your way that would be meaningful to talk about, right? So before we even talk about blocks in coaching presence, maybe we should start off by talking about what actually makes coaching presence and how does a coach develop that. Well, in a recent intensive that we ran with the students of coaching, one of the key things about making presence, what really is coaching presence, there is this sense of gravitas you carry as a coach, right? That makes a person want to listen in, or you're having the energy that they're happy to sit in. And so the question is then, how do you build your own gravitas as a coach that draws people into you and that allows them to feel so comfortable and to share what they need to share with you? And it's really really down to how you show up as a person in your life. That's the first thing. And also how you show up as a coach. How much are you really coaching, and what are you really learning as a coach? How do you integrate that within yourself? I think a lot of times what people don't realize is that to build gravitas as a coach, it's not just about how much you're coaching, but it's also about the amount of inner work you're doing on yourself. It's also about the results you create as a coach. And of course, last but not least, how are you integrating all of that into who you are, especially into your coach self? So in short, then, these are the 4 elements to what builds your presence as a coach. Simply put. Ming, what do you think?
Well, if I were to use physics to really talk about it, gravitas is really gravity plus vita. If you understand the root English of it. And of course, gravity simply means, another way of talking about is your weight. But then more than just your weight itself, you're looking into impact itself. Can you create an impact? Okay. And of course, impact is tied to how fast you move in life. And whether you're really moving in your displacement, in alignment with your displacement itself. Now, what is vital to us? At the core of it is really our essence, our core, which is why you brought in inner work, personal mastery as a gateway to get people to work through it so that they get closer to their essence and their core. Can gravitas be trained? I don't think it can be trained just by speaking confidently. I don't think it is about that. This is about your being, your embodiment of your deepest values and your deepest ethics. So if my deepest ethics is wealth, how am I playing out that wealth, in my presence? How am I carrying it in my beingness? Does everything I touch comes with it? Comes with what I embody, what I value, what I teach, what I preach, what I live by, whether I walk the walk and walk the talk, right? But then if you're shaping yourself to look in a particular way, just like most people, they will do that on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
But in reality, they don't live their life the same way. There's a miscongruency, and I guess that's how misalignment, identity crisis starts happening. Because who you really are versus who you are pretending to be, they're 2 different equations. And sometimes in the act of acting, you start forgetting who you really are.
True.
Right? So it becomes a mismatch. So identity crisis, what is that in short? Mismatch of costume, pretending the character you're playing is you.
Right.
And totally forgot about who you really are. Right. So meeting the past we avoid, which is what we are talking about. Okay. Really, inner work in short, getting to meet the different aspects of yourself that you left behind a long time ago. Process work is a gateway to understand this inner work.
What is process work?
Process work is really about us following our process. That's it.
How does that look like?
It looks like following nature. It looks like following the Tao. It looks like working with your body, paying attention to whatever comes up, letting it amplify it, unfolding it, and become the dream figure that you're dreaming into it. So it sounds very simple, but the act of it, being able to breathe by the principles, the first principles, and being able to live your life and actualizing that way comes. Now, I'm still very wowed by what we just spoke on and spoke about. You know, how I was dreaming you up as a second in command, and how you were dreaming people up into the car as your family itself, which kind of is a prison. And the problem is the prison is mobile. Right, it's going in a certain direction itself. That's why it's so painful, you know, structurally. But bring back to this topic itself, meeting the past we avoid. On one hand, we know that it takes a lot of courage, but then when does healing really begins? It begins when we begin to own the different parts of ourselves, that we allow it to play out in our external circumstances as our secondary figures, thinking that we have no part to play. The moment we can begin to own it, the story ends. We can change the outcome. Here comes the issue. Most people are not willing to own it. They deny it. They bargain. They do everything to avoid to meet the deepest part of themselves. And it's kind of funny because you spend your entire life chasing on the outside, only to realize what you were chasing on the outside is inside of you. Sounds like a mythical story of why Zeus, you know, and the Greek gods, you know, give people eyes. They make people look outside so that they will never realize the treasure and the gem is inside of themselves. And of course, if you're the one inside the car as you're driving from point A to point B, you have to always be looking outside. That's why it's impossible to look inside, because looking inside means a car accident on the outside. So that is a role. That's why you're locked up in the road. That's why your movement is only here or here.
Right.
You're connecting the dots.
Yep.
Because you can't look outside. As long as you're in this row, you can't look outside. So maybe you need to exit the car. Maybe the car is what you need to exit. And the car doesn't mean the projects you're leading, but exiting the framework of putting people into a cage in the car thinking that they're a family. The shelter of a family. Recreating a family.
Okay, understand.
In the shelter. You got it? So maybe that's your way to look inside yourself if you're out of that. Right. But you see, on my hand, I want to use this to look into myself. Why do I start dreaming you or somebody in as a second figure? Right. My pinpoint is I have been looking for a secondary figure who could do what I do for the last 12 years. And I think I need to come to accept that I am unique. And what I do can't be replicated. But can I train somebody to do it? The answer is yes, but not in my flavor, but in their flavor. So when they started believing in this story that I can find my second in command, I know that moment when I realized that, hey, this person has a second in command. This is where I need my second in command in order to build something far successful than that. What if that is the limitation? What if I'm just spending my energy out there looking for a false ideal character, dreaming people up only to be led to disappointment and resentment because that person doesn't exist? Just like most people chase after their ideal partners only to realize their ideal partners doesn't lie outside. It lies within themselves. So what does it mean if I can free myself from that role? It means that I stop looking for a person to take on my role. I can look for multiple people to fill in the gaps and to run the system.
Sounds very liberating.
See how that changes?
Yeah.
I'm not looking for another person and then pinning all the hopes and the hopelessness onto them, right?
Yep.
Which means what? The journey of building a community begins. No?
Yeah.
The energy is not moving.
No, not moving.
What's coming up for you? It stopped moving after I say that.
I felt that we were starting to.
Right. Right. So that's the answer, isn't it? Stop expecting to find that one person. Find a bunch of people. Include them. Accept the fact that I'm the only one like me in the world. And I guess the refusal to accept that makes me keep on chasing after another person, trying to train somebody to fill in that hole. But what if it can't be trained? What if it's too rigorous for a normal person to get trained to this level? Because their freaking beginnings, their construct wasn't the same as I do.
Yep. Exactly.
What's coming up for you?
That we sometimes we're so caught up in our own narratives that the world just dreams into that, and then it becomes a thing that we need to work through, and it makes me feel like end of the day is always about letting go of what we are caught on.
Right. Right. I never understood why you keep saying, why not get other people to do it? Why not get other people to do it? Now it makes perfect sense. Because you were being dreamt out into a second position role. Or a second in command role. Which is why you felt like you were helpless. There's no other way out. How does that hurt you or harm you or do to you? It reinforces your need for the family. It reinforces your own personal history of your trauma being in the car itself. So you see how that works in our relationship, and then it becomes a double binding. On one hand, I expect you to be a second in command, but that will never happen because you're not me, which means I'm dreaming you up to be a second Ming.
Yeah. Correct.
Right, which is why you are like, okay, this is not the way to do it, and then you feel like it's the world crashing down on you. Say you're running your course, your healing history course, and then I give you feedback. Even if I don't mean it that way, you felt like it was a whole death sentence on your life. Because you're in the role. You're in the role where that is not even supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think many times I will go like,
but you start
not
seeing
possible.
how that plays out in your own frame.
yeah.
You're in the car. You have to keep the family intact. But that also puts you into a prison because that's why they are attacking you. Because you're the second. They want to take your position.
Take.
But they can't. That's right, because they were not chosen by me. That's why they're after me. I'm talking about the people in the car, not the people outside of the car chasing.
There's so many layers.
Right, can you see that? How it unfolds? So I own my part. I'm going to be free from my role, my own dreaming. And you got to own your part
And
to let go of your
the car.
dreaming. That's right. Not step out of the car that you put yourself in when you were a child. That is the car. It's not CYT. The car is the family car. The car that holds the family.
Yeah, I understand.
The car that frees the family. How does it feel? I feel liberated.
Yeah.
To be able to talk about this whole thing like artistry.
Yeah, the level of clarity
Right.
and how everything's clicking because of that.
Right. So let's examine what keeps a person, after realizing knowing, that's one, but what keeps a person from letting go? Most coaches would think that now's the right time to talk about, okay, let's talk about future, let's talk about creating a future. How can we take the past lesson?
But the question is, are they ready?
I feel not yet. The process hasn't led to that action step yet. We're still in the process of unfolding. Right, that's why we suddenly talk about something that we were talking about during the toilet break itself.
Yep.
And these are the parts that we're avoiding based on the topic itself. And
Avoiding certain truths.
Avoiding certain truth, avoiding some of the biggest pain that we experience in our life. So we keep recreating the situation, hoping to seek for completeness. Not completion, completeness. Because when something is complete, you don't have to go on again. So as long as it's not complete, you'll never get your work done. That's why you always say, you'll never get your work done. You always say, I have a lot of work to do, I need to get to my work. But the fact is, none of the work got done as an outcome. So the work wasn't meant to get done, because if the work doesn't get done, your family can continue to stay in the car. We're at level 4 now.
Okay.
You're going to climb from level 1.5 now. That was what we're talking about down here. We just move up another level. The family was the thing.
Understand.
It's not the CYT. They are just a dream up thing.
Yes, I know.
It's the family.
Yep.
Okay, so is it time to let it go? Is it time to let go of that family? Now you understand why it was quite a death sentence, or do you? When he's actually said he wanted to move out by himself. Because somebody offered to step out of the car, but then... So that wasn't his dreaming or your mom's dreaming or any of the dreaming, is your dreaming. The car that you're trying to protect. You're trying to make sure the whole family is safe from the attackers. Are you
but then it's imprisoning them.
Just as it's imprisoning you.
Okay.
So what is it going to take for you to step out of the car? To realize that what you're chasing and protecting is the same reason why nothing gets done. He's gone. Everybody has already moved on. But you're still in that childhood dreaming.
Okay. Okay, I hear you.
You're feeling it? Or you're resisting it?
Just do what needs to be done.
You see, you're saying that again. It will not be done. It will not be done because this is not a doing thing. This is a choice you have to make to get out of the car.
What does it even mean to get out of the car?
It's first and foremost where you sit in the car. So we're on the topic on meeting the past you avoid.
Feels like the back.
The meter back? That was what I saw before I asked you to go into it. Right. How are you gonna get up? Right. That's why you squash in between. Makes sense now. Always in between. But that's the micro scale. The macro scale is you're in the car, you can't really get out. The car is moving forward, running away from an attacker.
So somebody else needs to get out first.
That's why I told you today, let them go. Somebody trying to gather, you try to pull them back in. It's danger, it's danger. Somebody's coming after you, you will die if you get out.
Okay.
You understand your reaction?
Mm.
What if they need to go? What if it's just too much for you, for them?
Yeah, then they go.
Is the material content too much
This one?
for you? Whatever we're talking about, is it too much for you? You look like you stopped processing for a while.
Yeah, it's getting heavy.
Right.
But I hear the birds outside.
Right. Freedom.
Mm.
Which means what? We're closer to freedom. Heavy means what? Edge. Stop.
Huh?
Continues. When do birds usually sing? Daybreak.
I see.
A nice ending.
Okay.
Get it?
Yeah. Because it was dark.
Took a while.
Yeah. 我终于加到早上了。
What a what a great birthday! What a great birthday and a New Year gift right before New Year.
Indeed.
Right? Can you see that?
Interesting.
But here comes the trap. When I hear the trap,
Okay.
the hopefulness that is going to end,
I see.
and then it becomes a hookup.
This is very much like Matrix or Inception.
That's right. We're having that level of conversation. Let them go.
Okay.
That's your answer to many problems that you have in your life.
Mm.
And if you do that, I think everything will be resolved. Everything. When I say everything, I'm talking about the biggies. The bigger stuff.
I know.
Right.
I know. I'm just seeing the different facets of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, it's big, huge.
Mm.
Something came out as you were saying, you're looking at a different facade, because that was the moment I saw a different facade. That's why you're always holding a parang. Because the parang is really looking at the back. So the child is at the front watching this thing, and who's looking at the back at the attacker, the one who's carrying the parang.
Mm.
They're the same two sides of the coin.
Yep.
The adult you and the young you. The child you and the teenager.
Yep. That's interesting.
Parang is trying to protect the family from the attackers that's chasing that one dream. We're in 4 layers now. And then
Yeah.
the child, the child is kind of looking at the front, behaving, making sure everybody is in there. See that? It's this position.
Mm.
How do we be free? Right? No, like that. Just let it die.
Okay.
think you're ready to let it die? You will know the indicator when you have let it die.
Okay.
So that's how you know that you have really done it.
Reminds me of the processes long time ago.
Which one?
The ones that was done when I initially met you.
Right. Right, so that's why I'm in this position, because you're dreaming me up into the person holding the parang. That's right, I follow my body symptom. Why is my back burn? Right, so I'm dreamt up into the role of the parang holding the fort, defending. So that's why the aggression comes out, the anger that comes out of nowhere. But that's not really me. People who know me. Right, it's a role. I'm being dreamt up by you as a parang warrior. That's why for years I kept looking for a swap.
Oh.
That's right.
Oh, you also?
That's right. So that one, I wanted it for myself. Somehow I give it to you. I see now. Because it wasn't mine. It wasn't my dream.
Right.
Right. You know what I'm talking about?
The sword, I know.
Obsidian blade.
Oh, okay.
Right, the parang. I was looking for a parang.
Yeah.
Right, then you give me one small, I ran. Very small. Remember?
Yeah. Interesting.
You remember?
Yes.
Right. What are you getting? That was big.
It's funny how things like just intertwine and overlap and
Right.
like the amount of awareness it takes to know what belongs to who. Because even at the level of awareness that we have or that is developed after years, it still takes a fair amount, right, to sense and feel and see which is whose, and therefore what it means for the individual.
Right.
On what they need to do differently, what they need to let go of, what they need to step out of.
Right. So to the students who are watching this, want you to know that there's no such thing as I've done enough work on myself. What is enough? Enough is another marginalization and edge of saying that, hey, I can't deal with it anymore. Right. When is something is too much?
Correct. But then what happens when it is your client who's bringing that too much to you?
That's right.
Right. Are you going to shrink back and disassociate from your coaches or the coaching session just because it gets too much? Because then you want to ask yourself internally what really is too much for you.
Right. If you have a challenge or an edge around feeling emotions, dealing with emotions, and then your client starts bringing that up, what's your atypical response? Internally, what's happening in your world?
Yeah.
Do you avoid it?
Do you pretend that the client is not emotional?
Or do you feel that you have to do something to stop them from feeling emotional? Because either way, that's your personal challenge that you need to work on. So that's where the personal growth comes in.
Yes, correct.
Right. So your ability to coach other people really is dependent on your ability to do the work on yourself in every moment. So are you really just a coach or client, or are you a student of life? Where the other person is actually a teacher trying to show you different parts of yourself that you have yet to meet within you.
That sounds like what we'll say of parents as well, right? Parents and kids.
That's right.
Like a lot of parents think that they're here to teach the kids.
Right.
But what if the kid is just a mirror trying to teach you something?
That's right. The child is the teacher, trying to teach the parents how to work through their conflicts. But then because, if people are unconscious about the rank, power, roles that they're in, they start thinking that they know better than the child. Their role is to teach the child, and that's a recipe for doom.
Yep.
Because that's how you pass down your childhood trauma to your child. But what if you can break out from that role? Then maybe a new conscious level of parenting can come in, where you're free from the role
I think that will be a topic that a lot of parents would be interested in.
Oh, we can do something about that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since, the level in which parents will tend to invest in their child. And they definitely want the best for the kids, but it's a question of, do you have what it takes to give the best?
Yeah.
And what is the best? Does the best come from the amount of money you put in, the amount of effort you put in? Because sometimes, no matter how much you put in any of this, doesn't exactly help the child.
That's right. And I want to really mention this, your coach presence is just a label, another title. Another title for the ICF regulation, for you to check your box. But that level of presence is no different from the level of presence you carry on a day-to-day basis with that level of awareness. You walk on the street, you didn't check, you didn't turn your head to check on the left side, the car hits you, you're gone. That presence doesn't just happen in coaching, it happens in every moment of your life. Every moment is a second chance to turn things around. Are you chopping wood, carrying water? Are you cleaning your toilet?
True. So when it comes to meeting the parts that we avoid, right, there are actually many types of personas we can end up embodying and taking on as a way of coping with yourself. Right, so some of the ones that we have actually prepared here would be things like how some coaches are actually there to just perform. They're not really there to care and impact so much about the client. That's part of it. But then it is more, should the word be narcissistic? It's more self-focused in terms of how good I look when I can impact the client a certain way. So then it loses, yes, ultimately it's about impacting the other person, but then there's still a lot more about you than it is for the impact that you're making. It's more about how the impact makes you look good.
Then it's not really quite right, because you're going to examine your primary motivation on why you want to help people or coach people in the first place. Impact is important, but if you're fixated about the impact, then you're following a certain routine, a certain set of regime, or a certain set of questioning that is limiting the client. You're actually putting the client back into their box.
Correct. Even though the client's not ready to move that certain way, maybe they need to be through a certain process, a different process instead. But you're insistent in bringing through a process that you feel that would make them get somewhere and make you look good, actually might make things worse instead.
That's right. It's like trying to force a turtle to believe that they're a bird by measuring them by their ability to fly. And they're going to spend their whole life believing they're stupid.
Yep.
Right, that's why if you put somebody into that role, what happens if they don't make it? You end up re-traumatizing them, creating new traumas. So we got to really be aware of how we're dreaming people up and traumatizing people around us, even if our intentions were good. Right, there's a saying that the path to hell begins with good intention.
Interesting.
Right,
Really?
everybody thought this is something is good for you, therefore they recommend you, leading you to a path of hell, which means devastation, hopelessness, destruction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not from a religious context, but it's really a very psychological way of understanding life. The roles that we play.
Yeah. So for the performer coach, then I think that's where you need to look into what are you performing, who are you really performing for, and why do you need to perform?
Right.
If you don't perform a certain way, then what happens? What are you really afraid of? What's this judgment that you see coming at you?
Right. And when is enough enough? When in your life do you feel like you're not enough? When in your life do you feel like you're less than? Right. How do you know you have these complexities when you believe that you're somebody? When you're believing that you're more than somebody else around you? Because more than and less than is the same side of the coin. And that's why it's not going to be enough with all these achievements, titles that you carry. You're still going to feel like there's a lack. So examine the lack. Where does it come from? When did you first feel the void? And what is the void? So instead of looking for something externally to fill it up, can we allow ourselves to begin to do the work inside to really heal what needs to be healed, so that you can end your own suffering?
Yeah. You have to name it first.
Right. To heal something, you have to name it. You're gonna own it. Name has power, right? That's why we're given names. Labels have power. That's why people get trapped in the role. Because there's a consensus reality in a physicality way.
Yep. So that's the first type, the performer coach. The second type of coach, it's a trait that many people have. It's called a people pleaser. Right. So the people pleaser coach, what kind of behaviors do they give? They're looking for approval and acceptance from the client, to feel at ease with themselves and who they are. They will often soften their questions to say like, even though maybe the client needs the truth directly, right? And they don't get to the point of the question or the observation that they want to make. And they also pull back when they sense resistance instead of trudging forward to get somewhere impactful. So those are the qualities or behaviors that a people pleaser would put out, right? So how does this affect the depth and outcome of the clients? Likely, you're not really working on the client's issue, but you're working just to say the things that will make them give you the words that you want to hear, that are pleasing to your ears. Right? And the client stays comfortable because you do not know or do not actually challenge them when they need to be challenged. And when you soften the questions, then, perhaps the client think that you're a pushover too. And you want to then see what happens to the power dynamics in the relationship.
A people pleaser also avoid conflict. They run away from conflicts. They try to tiptoe around just so that they don't step onto the wrong tail.
Wow. That's a very uncomfortable role to be in.
Right.
Like you can't step. I feel like that role is very constrained. You're very fearful to make any sort of movement, because any sort of movement could jeopardize you. And because of that, then you end up not making any movement. But if that's the case, then what gives you what it takes to even coach a client? Right? It really goes back to the whole aspect of inner work and how you need to work through some of these aspects. Because you also need to lead with courage when that's needed. We're talking about how does a people pleaser coach navigate within themselves, right, when a client disagrees. So you first want to tune into how you're really feeling about this disagreement that has surfaced from a client. How are you receiving it? Is there an emotional response that is surfacing? Or even in your body, where does this disagreement hit you in your body? Which part of it? Do you feel your heart drop because like, oh my God, how can my client say that of me? What does it mean about me? Or perhaps you feel some sort of rejection, a pushback or a cutoff when that happens. So you first want to understand like tune into what's happening within yourself when the disagreement shows up, right? And how does that make you experience that within yourself? And how does that make you feel about yourself when that shows up? So I would say that it's really about building that awareness within yourself so that you begin to see how you are experiencing rejections or disagreements, and perhaps that will give you some answers to how to start to tackle it within yourself. Because sometimes the disagreement is not personal. It's just the coach's way of expressing themselves. How do you as a coach step into your coach self and take this objectively as a feedback of what's working or not working for the relationship? Or even that might, easily just be the client's own pattern that we actually need to take on and examine with them. So this whole thing could go many ways, but it's a question of how you take it, how you sit with it, what position you're standing to view this that will give you the answers on how best to progress forward with the disagreement. But for sure, being people-pleasing and giving in may not be the best solution, because then the client's going to get their way, and more likely than not, they are not going to introspect and look into what might be a problem with the way that they're disagreeing or what they're disagreeing. So there's an interesting question. How much does the coach presence depend on being accepted? I think if you care a lot about how people see you and you are working on being accepted by others, it does very little for the coach presence, right? Because any external feedback or validation is temporal. Once that fades off, then you go back to the same low that you always feel. So in the longer term, it is about how do you work on yourself to the degree that you can be more inner directed instead of outer directed. That you're not that dependent on how other people view you, but you begin to create your own voice for yourself and be able to see and validate yourself for who you are, and also equally be able to objectively review how you are being, whether for the good or bad, so that it supports you in how you grow as a coach. So that's the second type of coach type that, does not really support the coach self or the client in a session. The third coach type is a savior. So what is the savior coach? What's the behavior and mindset of a savior coach? They generally feel responsible for the client's outcome, and they will take on more ownership than the client for whatever issue or projects or outcomes that the client wants. So in essence, they tend to overdo it. Their self-worth is shaped by how much they impact and help others. So when I hear that, that's already almost like a red flag. It sounds like the savior coach is someone who could burn out, taking on what's not theirs and having to handle their own shit while handling the shit of others as well. So you want to ask about whether that is a good investment of your time for what you're getting from the client. Right. So how does it impact you as a savior coach when you're helping others so much? So I think I began to give a hint of it earlier on, where when you take on more than you should, likelihood is going to become too much to take after a while. It becomes overwhelming. Your system struggles to cope, and that's where you start to burn out. And it's funny, your own system is set up to protect yourself, but because you are wired to be a savior, there's actually no boundaries in terms of you taking care of yourself, but instead you end up going all out to the extent that you become a sacrifice for what you've taken on from the client. And that itself really is very unhealthy. Right, so you want to consider, if you're a savior coach, you often do more than you should for the client, then how is it really impacting you? And is that the kind of coach you want to be? Is that the experience you want to have? As much as we are here to deliver an experience to the client, but at the same time, you as a coach, there is an experience you wanted to have coming into coaching and being a coach. What is that? That's important for you to remind yourself of. Perhaps the outcome is what you're chasing, but how about the journey and the process? Did it line up the way that you imagine it to be? Or do you feel like you have to suffer more for what you've signed up for? So how can you manage your own uneasiness when the client stays stuck? Because as a savior coach, you always want the client to get somewhere, to feel like you've helped them, to feel like you've contributed or added value during this time. And the way you manage it may become unhealthy, especially when there are times where not all coaching sessions the client will successfully progress and move into a state of solution, of clarity, of freedom, of whatever that they need to feel of the session, right? So in cases where they stay stuck, to be honest, that's also their process. Perhaps sometimes the stuckness is what they need to feel what is truly the feeling of stuckness, and so that they can make their own decision and choice to step out of it, to break out of it, right? And by you being a savior coach and pulling them out forcefully could backfire on you, because then they will end up reliant on you moving them along wherever there's stuckness. So there's this thing that we mentioned in other videos around how do you respect the process of others and allow that to manifest or unfold on its own. It's not very different from being able to like follow the flow of life. Sometimes not everything needs to be forcefully put to the end where an outcome happens. Sometimes a person needs to journey longer to get to the outcome. So it's a matter of, is the outcome really the most important thing in the session? Is that what the client need in order to grow? And if not, then perhaps you need to give the leeway for them to experience this. So it's about the whole trauma sensitivity or psychological safety we're talking about. How do you pace with the client without driving them at your pace?
It is about trusting the process.
Yes.
Right? Trust the process, believe in your experiences, and follow where the energy goes.
Exactly. Then another question about the savior type, right? How do you as a savior coach hold back from taking more ownership than you should? Well, my answer to that is, what are you truly owning in this entire thing? And whatever that you have taken on as ownership, is that right for you to own it? When you take on that ownership, who are you depriving of in owning what they need to own? And if let's say the principle of coaching at some level is for your clients to learn their lessons, grow and move on, then how are you creating a unending cycle with them when they stay a certain way because you take the ownership such that they can't move on and learn from their lessons and live freely as they should? But instead they get locked up in this thing where they are reliant on you in order to progress forward. Okay, so that's the third coach type. The fourth one is the overthinker. I think the overthinker is quite a famous one. Most people, again, have it. And the concept of an overthinker, the overthinker often becomes a procrastinator, because when they think too much, they tend to become indecisive and therefore stay stuck when it comes to making decisions and taking actions. Right, so overthinker coaches tend to retreat into thinking when emotions surface. So how can they manage emotions better? And so it's a question of you're trying to build a muscle that you didn't have before. And to do so, you got to first sense into your emotions in normal times, so that at least you know what you're feeling inside while you're thinking of something. But at the same time, when conflict occurs or there's an escalation that's unpleasant, you also want to start tuning in even when you're not in a coaching session, so that you begin to understand how you feel internally in normal circumstances. And that experience will help you to know how to regulate when it comes to a session with a client, where your own emotions should not become part of the equation that impacts how the coaching flows. So how do you as an overthinker coach lose presence? And of course, where you lose presence is the pattern of behavior you go into. So in this case, when you're overthinking, you're going to lose presence because you're going to be in your own head. Your client's not going to connect with you being there, and therefore they are also going to go on their own paths. So how do you regain and embody your presence more? Well, as the word embody suggests, there's a body in it. So what you really need to do is to not just tune into what's in your mind, but also start to sense into your emotions, your feelings, your body, and any other sensations that's around you, within you, outside of you, that you can tune into so that you begin to come out of your mind into the other aspects of yourself. And in that sense, you fill up into a more wholesome aspect of yourself. Not just you as a person, but also you as a coach. And I think that's what's going to make a big difference for yourself. So what do you think you lose as an overthinker coach when you stay in your head? I can already hear a lot of answers coming out. So when you stay in your head, you lose presence, that's the first thing. You also lose touch to what the client might be giving you as cues, because the overthinker coach, actually, to be honest, you're not really present with the client. You're just thinking in your head about what the client says or what you think they said, but you're not present with them in what they're actually communicating in the moment, be it verbal or non-verbal, and that creates issues. Right, so for you as an overthinker coach, you want to be able to start tuning into your other senses, because then those become a reminder for you to step out of what's in your mind to the other aspects of you that also makes up who you are. And you know, it's also about trusting that when you rely on these other aspects that you haven't leaned into, that they give you more to work with. Because I'm sure the overthinker mind does get stuck at times. So you do need to find other channels that can support you forward, especially with a client in a critical moment. So Ming, do you think there are any other coach types that are detrimental to coaching presence, aside from the ones that we've brought up?
I want to expand a little bit on this savior archetype. Okay. So as the savior archetype, you also need to realize that you are dreaming your client as a victim. You're dreaming them to be helpless. You're dreaming them up to be powerlessness. That's why you believe that they don't have the means or the hands or the legs to even save themselves. Right? So you want to use that to look into yourself, where in your life, where do that complexes, come from? Then there's also this thing called the God complex, right? You believe you can solve everything.
Okay.
Not the same as savior. Savior come from the word saving, right? You're trying to save somebody because you believe the other person is in danger. It requires saving. The God complex, as archetype itself, as a coach type, believe that they can solve everything. Right? So there's this whole level of grandiosity and delusion. Right? But you must always realize that the role of the coach is not to solve the client's problem. It's to facilitate, it's to coach them.
Yeah, I feel the sense of superiority when you speak of the God.
That's right, it's a rank. It's a rank thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a rank that we project people who are very outstanding, who are a genius, who are outliers, But there are two kinds of outliers. If you perceive somebody as a God figure, chances are the person is not an outlier, which create another type itself of persona where nobody understands that person. So a coach will believe that he's not understood, misunderstood.
Right.
Right, the misunderstood archetype. The coach type is actually the misunderstood type. So they have to keep on repeating the same thing and say the same thing in the coaching session itself, thinking the client didn't get them.
Oh, sounds tiring.
Oh,
the
yeah.
aspect of over-explaining.
Right. So you'll notice the way they ask the questions itself is going to be repeated.
Yeah, or they're going to say the question and ask about why they say the question.
But the good news is they will score very well based on the ICA requirements on checking in.
Well, I beg to differ.
Always checking in for understanding.
I beg to differ. Because it becomes confusing.
That's right.
Like it is against
I thought I already answered that. How come you're asking me this again? I thought we were on this. Right. So you have to be very clear about what role you're playing, what is the type that you are entrenched into as a narrative itself, such that you're reinforcing that to play out in the external reality. Of course, there's another one, the overthinker, as you mentioned. Then there's another one called underthinker.
The one that doesn't want to think.
The one who doesn't want to think. Right. Now
you
the
just
one
ask questions based off the last sentence of coach. the client says.
Yeah, so that one is dangerous because that means that they have clear listening issues. They are not really tracking, they're not really fully present itself, and they will always miss out details like the non-verbal. If the verbal they are really missing out, they're going to miss out even more so on the non-verbal cues. Right. Then there's another archetype itself, the dreamer archetype. So they are constantly dreaming the clients up when what the client needs is really the groundedness and the firmness, the leader. Alright. Another coach type is the leader. Always asking the client to take action, very focused and biased towards taking action. But then sometimes not everybody need the action yet. And maybe if we follow the process itself, you will realize the action comes way later. So their gap is in following the process. Then there's also another archetype when it comes to a coach type that got to do with the destroyer.
Wow.
Okay, so client presents something, they are inclined to tear it down. Tear it down, tear it down, tear it down, tear it down. They are inclined to just put it off. You're going to be careful of that because if you're in that role itself, you start realizing that you're dampening the fire of the client, and that's why they wouldn't have the fire to follow through in taking action.
Yeah, I mean, you just reminded me of a coach that I have encountered before. Initially, I was thinking, how would someone of the archetype actually be a coach? But then when I think about it, is there such a person that exists? The answer is yes. But then what kind of, or what's the target audience of such a coach that makes it work? The client would have to be a C-suite or somebody who's like really very successful to the extent that they don't get affected or dampened by such a coach. But it also means that as a coach, you're limited by the range of people you can coach.
Right. Another coach type that they could be limited to is an orphan caregiver type. A caregiver who believe that they need to care people because they grew up as an orphan. As an archetype, is a psychological orphan, whereby they feel like the other person doesn't have enough, so they have to keep giving. And usually people who are of that nature, they found themselves getting very drained after coaching session. They are usually underpaid. Usually they get into burnout and nothing really seems to work for them when it comes to money. Okay. And often archetype itself believe that they have to do everything by themselves, so they will tend to focus a lot on independence. What do they need to do by themselves? How can they take more action? And be careful of that because sometimes what people really need is a community of people, creating a support structure itself. And the people who tend to fall into an orphan archetype will miss that because it's convenient. Based on the you're asking questions based on the biasness. You're choosing a direction to take in the coaching session based on your history. So it's never personal,
Yep.
Then of course, if there's a savior, there's also the one who is always in pain. Okay, who really always focus in a biased way around pain point. Just like the dreamer keeps focusing on the dream when groundedness is required. The person who is pain becomes very dissociated from the entire coaching session itself. And they always tend to miss the point of the coaching objective.
Wow. Okay.
Alright. What else?
I think that's a lot.
Is it a lot?
Yeah.
Oh, we can pause there. If you want to find out more, make sure you join our Coaching Accelerator program, where we will uncover more of these archetypes. There are about 23 of them that we use more openly, and 36 others that we thought we don't really go deep into it because they tend to come out as more secondary.
I
Right.
see.
So the archetypes itself, how do we map people? Not by personality. Your personality is not a fixed point. It's based on your history wounds, your historical contents itself. So that's why it's so important to do your inner work. And it's very important, even more so, to transcend the configurations you had with you in your birth for a long time. So that's what working on itself really means. You're changing the course of your life. And if you could change the course of your life, surely you could coach a person and bring transformation into their journey.
Yes, that sounds like another topic.
Right.
Around personal mastery as a coach, which you should search up the video to look at. So when you have all these parts that you avoid, what happens? What you avoid will run the session in the ways that we've described earlier on. And what are signs of avoidance? Do you even know what type you are? Do you even examine to see how you impact your client? And is whatever that you are facilitating your client through in the way that you do actually for the highest good of your client? If not, then you want to begin to think about like which archetype you fall into. Or perhaps it could even be a type that's not here. But the key thing is that you have to see what that truth is and start acknowledging it.
Awareness, 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 awareness.
Otherwise, it's going to play out in exactly the ways that we mentioned earlier.
That's right. And that is the training that we do. Awareness.
Yep. And when you avoid those parts because you don't see them as you, or you refuse to accept those as part of you, ask yourself, how does that reflect the depth of work that the client can go through? Because what you avoid means that you can't bring the client through the same stuff. So even though you know that the client is a certain way, but because you also have that part, you can't bring them through facing that part because you're not yet ready to face it yourself. So it takes a lot, right? Inner work and coaching to be able to come face to face with yourself, acknowledge the parts that you avoid. And when you can name what you're avoiding, you also start to work through them.
Right. So this is the real deep work that we do on ourselves. And really, what matter do you get? You're not looking for external validation when you realize the true power comes inside of you. You have the ability to affect the larger cause of your life and the life of the people around you. And why would you own the responsibility? Because that is your power.
Yep.
So with this, we'll conclude this current episode and we'll see you in the next.
Yes. Look out for the next one.